They were built to heal the mind, but instead became prisons of endless torment. Behind these crumbling walls, former patients still wander, trapped between our world and theirs. What you're about to see has never been shown on camera before. Footage that will haunt your dreams. Enter if you dare. I still replay that night in my head, wondering if I could have saved more of them. The thing about working night shift at a psychiatric ward is that everything feels slightly off anyway. The fluorescent lights, the echoing footsteps, the occasional muffled cry. But that night was different. I knew something wasn't right the moment I clocked in for my shift. There was tension in the air, like the building itself was holding its breath. I'd been a nurse at Riverside Psychiatric for 15 years, seen budget cuts come and go, watched good doctors leave, but nothing prepared me for what I discovered in those patient files. It started with Sarah Martinez, sweet elderly woman with early onset dementia. One day she was there, the next gone, transfer papers all signed and dated, but something felt wrong. The signatures didn't match up, the dates were inconsistent. I started digging deeper, more transfers, more inconsistencies. All during Administrator Wilson's time here, all elderly patients with no close family. I kept detailed notes, documented everything. That's when the night calls started, heavy breathing on the other end, then click. I'd catch glimpses of someone watching me in the parking lot. Dark figure, always just at the edge of my vision. Then one night, I found the connection. Old insurance claims, Medicare fraud, millions of dollars, and death certificates. So many death certificates, all with the same doctor's signature, all at the same hospice facility 3 states away. I confronted Wilson that night. Big mistake. His smile didn't reach his eyes when he said, "We'll need to discuss this in private." My heart was pounding as I followed him to his office, the click of the door locking behind me. That's when I saw the syringe on his desk. I still don't know how I made it out, pure adrenaline, I guess. The security footage mysteriously disappeared. Wilson took an unexpected retirement. The investigation is still ongoing, but sometimes, when I'm alone on night shift, I swear I can hear footsteps following me down those dark corridors, and I wonder how many more patients disappeared before I noticed. How many lives could I have saved if I'd just paid attention sooner? The worst part that isn't the nightmares or the guilt. It's knowing that somewhere out there, more vulnerable patients are vanishing. More families are getting fake transfer papers, and someone is still getting away with murder. I keep searching, keep documenting, but these days I always check the back seat of my car before getting in. Always take a different route home because I know they're still out there, still watching, still waiting, and I'm the only one who knows the truth. Last week, I received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photograph, Sarah Martinez, sitting in a wheelchair. The date stamp showed it was taken 3 days ago. She looked terrified. On the back, written in red ink, "Still want to play detective?" I should have gone to the police, should have handed everything over, but I couldn't. Not yet. Because mixed in with that terror in Sarah's eyes, I saw recognition. She's still alive, still aware enough to know what's happening to her. And I'm the only chance she has, so I started my own investigation, created a detailed spreadsheet of every suspicious transfer over the past decade, cross-referenced death certificates with Social Security records, found patterns, names that kept appearing, facilities that existed only on paper. I installed security cameras in my home, started carrying pepper spray, changed my phone number weekly. The threats kept coming. Dead flowers on my doorstep. My cat disappeared, then reappeared 3 days later with a small note tied to its collar. Next time it won't come back. But I won't stop. Can't stop. Because every time I close my eyes, I see Sarah's face, see all their faces, the ones I failed to protect, the ones who vanished into a system designed to profit from their disappearance. Tonight, I'm meeting someone, a former administrator who claims to have proof, says they can't live with the guilt anymore. I've taken precautions, left copies of everything with my sister. Told her if I don't check in every hour, call the FBI, not the local police. They're probably involved too. My hands are shaking as I write this. The meeting is in 20 minutes. In a public place, but we both know that doesn't guarantee safety, not from people with this much power. This much to lose. If you're reading this, it means something went wrong. It means I didn't make it back, but maybe, just maybe, My death will finally force someone to look closer, to ask the right questions, to save the ones who are still out there, still waiting to be found, still hoping someone will notice they're gone, because in the end, that's all any of us want. To know that someone would miss us if we disappeared, that someone would care enough to look for us, to fight for us, to remember us. And I remember them all, every name, every face. Look, I never thought I'd end up like my mom, but here I am, questioning my own sanity. Funny how life works out, right? So here's the thing. I got this amazing opportunity to head up the restoration of Oakwood Asylum, like career-making stuff, real prestigious project. I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe working on it would help me understand why my mom spent her last years there. Spoiler alert, I really wish I hadn't gone digging. It started off totally normal, just boring paperwork for the grant proposal. I'd done a million of these before, no big deal. But when I started going through Oakwood's history, okay, this is gonna sound crazy, but I kept finding these weird patterns. Like patients from way back in the 60s were describing the exact same things my mom used to talk about. They all said the building was alive somehow, that it was watching them. I know, sounds nuts, right? I tried to ignore it, just focused on the architecture instead. The building really was gorgeous in that creepy Victorian way. All that fancy stonework and those beautiful old brass fixtures, those huge arched windows that made the light do weird things in the afternoon. But then stuff started happening, little things at first, you know how it goes. That hospital smell in rooms that had been empty for decades. These really cold spots that didn't make any sense. And then the whispers started. God, the whispers. I was in the East Wing by myself, taking pictures of this amazing original tile work. When I first heard them, just these quiet little murmurs, like someone was having a conversation just around the corner. But every time I looked, nothing. Nobody there, that's when my meds stopped working. I'd been stable for years on the same antipsychotics, but suddenly they weren't doing jack. I started seeing these, I don't even know how to describe them, like shadows moving when I wasn't looking directly at them. My coworkers definitely noticed something was up. They kept saying stuff like, "Emma, you need to slow down," and maybe take a few days off. But I couldn't stop. I had to figure out what happened to my mom there, why she got so convinced there was something evil in that place. Time was running out too, demolition date getting closer every day. Then I found it, this hidden room in the basement behind a fake wall. Stacks and stacks of old patient files that nobody had ever digitized. And right there in the middle, my mom's file. Reading it was like reading about myself. All the same symptoms, same progression, same desperate attempts to warn people about what she'd found. I should have just walked away right then, but, well, you know how it goes. The next part is hard to talk about. I was alone in the building, like definitely alone, but I heard these footsteps upstairs, heavy ones, getting closer. It got so cold I could see my breath, which makes zero sense for July in Arizona. And then I saw it, the same thing my mom wrote about in her last journal entry. This mass of darkness, moving, reaching. I ran. Don't even remember getting to my car. Haven't set foot in that place since. But that's not even the worst part. The dream started that night. I'm always back in Oakwood, but it's all wrong. The hallways don't make sense. Doors open into places that can't exist, and something's always following me. Getting closer, I wake up soaked in sweat, convinced I can hear those footsteps in my apartment. My doctor keeps saying it's just stress, wants to change my meds. But I know what I saw, what my mom saw. They're demolishing the place next week. Part of me is like, good, bury that thing under a mountain of concrete. But the rest of me, the part that's starting to sound exactly like my mom, that part knows it won't matter. Because whatever's in Oakwood, it's in my head now too. Sometimes when I'm getting ready for work, I'll catch my reflection and it's like something else is looking back at me through my own eyes. And here's a fun new development. I've started drawing again. Haven't done that since architecture school. But these aren't normal drawings. They're not even really mine, if that makes sense. They show these impossible spaces, rooms that couldn't exist. And in every single corner, every shadow, there's always something watching. The exact same stuff my mom was drawing at the end. I see the patterns everywhere now. Yesterday was the worst. I straight up blacked out or something because I came to just standing outside Oakwood. No memory of driving there. just found myself staring up at those windows. And I swear to God, for a split second, I saw my mom looking back at me, or maybe it was my reflection. I honestly can't tell anymore. Finally get why she refused to leave, why she fought so hard when they tried to transfer her. That building, it doesn't just want to be saved, it needs to be, and now so do I. I never should have taken that maintenance job at Riverside Psychiatric, but bills were piling up and night shift paid better. That's what I kept telling myself as I made my rounds through those dimly lit corridors. Everyone said the place was haunted. I didn't believe in ghosts, but after what I found in those tunnels, I believe in something much worse. I had been working there for about 3 months when Maya from that true crime podcast reached out. She was investigating patient disappearances from the 70s. At first, I brushed her off, but then I started noticing things during my shifts, little details that didn't add up, like the old service elevator that wasn't on any floor plans, or the way certain walls sounded hollow when I knocked on them. Being in maintenance, I had access to everything. So one night, I decided to look closer. The basement level was always cold, but that night it felt different, heavy somehow. I followed the pipes along the ceiling, checking for the leak that maintenance upstairs had reported. That's when I found it. Behind an old supply cabinet, a door, small and metal, painted the same color as the wall. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my keys. The lock was old, but it matched the master key we used for the storage rooms. I know I should have called someone, reported it maybe. But curiosity got the better of me. The door opened with this awful grinding sound, like it hadn't been used in decades. My flashlight beam caught nothing but darkness at first. Then, stairs, narrow concrete steps leading down. The air that came up was stale, musty, with something else underneath, something chemical. I texted Maya right then, sent her a photo. She called immediately, told me not to go down alone, but I was already taking those first steps. The tunnel stretched ahead, curving slightly to the left. Old pipes and cables ran along the ceiling. Some looked newer than others. Then I saw the doors. Heavy steel with small windows, like prison cells. Most were locked, but one wasn't. Inside was a room, small, tile floors and walls, all stained this sickly yellow color. There was medical equipment, ancient stuff covered in dust, and filing cabinets, rows of them. I pulled open a drawer with my gloved hand. The files inside, patient records, but not like any I'd seen before. These were different. Experimental procedures, drug trials, things that made my stomach turn. That's when I heard it. Footsteps echoing from somewhere in the tunnel, and voices getting closer. I killed my flashlight. Pressed myself against the wall. The voices were clearer now, talking about containment. Security breaches. My heart was hammering so hard I thought they'd hear it. They passed right by the room. I caught glimpses through the window, men in suits, not hospital security, something else. I waited until their footsteps faded, then I ran. Didn't stop until I reached the main floor. Maya was already there, waiting in her car outside. We drove straight to her studio, spent the whole night going through the photos I'd taken, connecting them to her research. The stories started coming out after that, former patients, staff members who'd quit suddenly, people who tried to expose things over the years, but always seemed to disappear. That was 3 weeks ago. I quit the next day, told them it was family issues. Maya's podcast episode is going live tomorrow. We've got police involved now, reporters, but sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about those tunnels, about the footsteps, and about all the things we still don't know, buried in the darkness beneath Riverside Psychiatric. The thing is, it didn't end there. Last week, I got an envelope at my apartment, no return address. Inside were more files, newer ones, dating up to just last year. Someone on the inside wanted the truth out. The experiments never stopped, they just got better at hiding them. Maya and I started digging deeper, found connections to pharmaceutical companies, government contracts, and a whole network of similar facilities across the country, each with their own secrets buried underground. Then the warnings started coming. First, it was just hang-up calls, then my apartment was broken into, nothing taken, just left slightly different. A message, I installed security cameras, started staying at Maya's place. We kept digging, found names of doctors, administrators, people still working in healthcare today, running hospitals, making policies, Last night, I saw one of the men from the tunnel, standing across the street from Maya's studio, just watching. He had this smile like he knew something we didn't, like all our digging was part of some bigger plan. Maya thinks we should release everything now, put it all online before they can stop us. But I'm not so sure. The files hint at things, programs that go beyond just medical experiments, things about consciousness, memory manipulation, mind control. I never wanted to believe in patterns. As a psychiatrist, I built my career on rational explanations. But what happened to my Lily? It changed everything. I still remember that first morning I noticed something was wrong. The way she stood at the kitchen window, completely still, just staring at nothing, her hand drawing circles on the glass over and over. I called out to her. No response. The circles kept going, steady, mechanical, almost like someone else was guiding her hand. I grabbed my phone to record it. The timestamp read 3:33 a.m. My blood ran cold when I realized she must have been standing there for hours. The next day at work, I couldn't focus on my patients. My mind kept drifting back to those circles. That's when I remembered the old case files in the hospital archives, the ones nobody talked about, from Blackwood Asylum, the facility my grandmother had worked at in the 60s. I'd always avoided those records. Too many rumors about what went on there, but something pulled me toward that dusty filing cabinet that day. The file was labeled Case 333. My hands trembled as I opened it. Patient exhibited repetitive circular motions, particularly in early morning hours, often found standing completely still, dissociative state. The description matched Lily exactly. I dug deeper, found more files, more patients with the same symptoms, all related somehow to the asylum's genetic research program, a program my grandmother had overseen. I drove home in a daze that night, trying to make sense of it all. That's when I saw Lily, standing at her window again, drawing those perfect circles, but this time she turned to look at me and smiled. That smile, it wasn't my daughter's smile, it was my grandmother's, the same smile I'd seen in those old asylum photos. I ran inside, up the stairs, but Lily's room was empty, just circles on the window, visible from the inside, like someone had been trying to get out. The next few weeks were a blur of tests. Specialists, old hospital records. I found a pattern of similar cases spanning decades, all connected to former asylum staff or patients, all showing the same symptoms at age 15, Lily's exact age. Then I found my grandmother's private research notes, hidden in our attic all these years, the genetic modifications, the experiments on children, the attempt to create something, someone, that could pass between generations. That could come back, but there was more. So much more. The notes mentioned a specific genetic sequence, one that lay dormant until adolescence. My grandmother called it the inheritance pattern. She believed she could encode memories, experiences, even consciousness itself into DNA, transfer them across generations, like a virus lying dormant, waiting to emerge. I found a list of test subjects, families who had been part of the program, their children, their children's children, all showing the same symptoms. All at exactly 3:33 a.m., all drawing those perfect circles. I tried to warn the hospital board, show them the evidence, but they dismissed it, called it impossible, paranoid delusions. They suggested I take a leave of absence, get some rest. But I couldn't rest, not when I kept finding more connections, more patterns, the way certain patients would disappear from the records, the way their families would suddenly move away. No forwarding address, no trace. And then I found the photographs, hidden behind my grandmother's old research notes, images of the children, standing at windows, drawing circles, their faces all wearing that same smile, my grandmother's smile, the one I now saw on Lily's face every morning at 3:33 a.m. Last night, I stayed up watching her. The circles seemed different somehow, more deliberate, like they were forming words. I leaned closer to the glass and squinted in the darkness. And there it was, a message hidden in the overlapping circles. Join us. My grandmother's handwriting, perfect and precise, just like I remembered. I'm writing this now because this morning, I caught myself standing at the window, my hand moving in perfect circles, and I can feel her, my grandmother, getting stronger, wanting to finish what she started. The pattern isn't just symptoms, it's a doorway, a way for her to come back, to collect us all, one by one, adding us to her perfect pattern, her endless experiment. If you're reading this, please help my daughter, help me. Before the pattern takes hold, before we become part of her collection, before we disappear into those endless circles like all the others did. God, I can feel my hands starting to move again. The circles, they're so perfect, so beautiful. Maybe I should just keep drawing, just for a little while, just until, wait, something's different. The circles, they're forming new words now. My grandmother's voice whispering in my head. Welcome home. No, please, someone help us, before it's too late, before we all become part of her pattern. I still remember the sound of my footsteps echoing through those empty halls. That night changed everything, and I'm still not sure how I made it out alive. I'd been pulling double shifts at Metro General for weeks. The workload was crushing us all. But that night, the storm came out of nowhere. Whiteout conditions, roads completely impassable. I knew I couldn't make it home, not safely. That's when I remembered St. Catherine's Psychiatric Hospital. It had closed down just last month. Budget cuts, they said. I transferred several patients from there during the closure. The building would be empty, shelter from the storm. I parked my car in the abandoned lot, snow whipping against my face as I made my way to the entrance. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone, using it as a flashlight. The emergency power was still running, dim fluorescent lights flickering in the hallways, that sterile hospital smell still lingering in the air. I found the old staff break room and settled in, just waiting for the storm to pass. That's when I heard it. Footsteps coming from the east wing. My heart stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Old buildings make noise. But then, a voice. Dr. Anderson. My blood ran cold. Someone knew my name. I recognized that voice, but I couldn't place it, not right away. The footsteps were getting closer. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to control my breathing. You said I was sick. You signed the papers, took away my life. That's when it hit me. Robert Kane, a patient I'd evaluated in the ER 3 months ago, severe paranoid delusions. He'd threatened his family. I'd recommended emergency commitment. He was supposed to be at state now. How did he get here? The lights went out, complete darkness, just the sound of his footsteps and my racing heart. Let's play a game, doctor, like the ones you used in your evaluation. See who's really crazy now. I ran through the darkness, trying to remember the layout. Every turn felt wrong, every shadow held a threat. He was toying with me, his voice echoing from different directions. What are you afraid of, doctor? Isn't this what sick people do? Hide in the shadows, strike when you least expect it. I found the stairs, started climbing, my legs burning, lungs screaming for air. 3rd floor, 4th. The roof access. Maybe I could signal for help. The door was locked. I heard him behind me. No more running. I turned, saw his silhouette in the stairwell, the glint of something metal in his hand. I'm not sick, I never was, but you... I never thought I'd be afraid of my own mind. Numbers used to be my comfort zone, the reliable constants in my life. Working as a forensic accountant meant I could always trust in data, in the perfect logic of spreadsheets and audit trails. But after what happened at New Horizons Behavioral Health, I don't trust anything anymore, not even my own memories. It was supposed to be a routine audit of their mental health facilities. Nothing special, just another assignment checking compliance and financial records. Then I noticed something weird in their insurance claims. The patterns didn't add up. Patient records were matching up with huge policy payouts in ways that made my skin crawl. When I brought it up to my supervisor, he brushed it off, said I was working too hard, needed a vacation. I should have listened. Instead, I dug deeper. That's when the strange stuff started happening. First, it was just small things. Notes on my desk I didn't remember writing. Calendar entries for meetings I never attended. I blamed it on stress, on working too many late nights. But then entire email threads started disappearing. Conversations I knew I'd had just vanished into thin air. The day I lost 6 hours was when I finally realized how much trouble I was in. I remember sitting down at my desk that morning, 9 a.m. sharp, ready to dive into a suspicious batch of patient files. Next thing I knew, it was 3 in the afternoon. My coffee cup was still warm, right where I'd left it that morning, but my notebook, the one with all my investigation notes, was gone. My phone showed texts I had no memory of sending, telling everyone I was working from home, but I hadn't left my desk. Had I? I spent that whole night poring over patient records, 6 suicides in 3 months, all right after their insurance policies got updated. They called them tragic coincidences. The facilities were spread across different jurisdictions, so nobody connected the dots. Nobody except me. I got smart after that, set up cameras in my office, started recording everything, and that's how I caught Dr. Richards, the facility director, drugging my coffee one Tuesday morning at 10:40, and watching that footage made me sick, the way he moved through my office like he owned it, going through my drawers, erasing files from my computer. He'd done this before. I watched myself just sitting there, slumped over my desk, completely helpless, while he dismantled my investigation piece by piece. But he got sloppy, missed the backup drive I'd hidden in an old accounting textbook. Every death, every forged document, every altered record, I had it all. I took everything to the FBI, even though I was terrified I might be losing my mind. The agent who interviewed me didn't say much at first, just showed me some files that turned my blood to ice. 3 other accountants had reported similar experiences while investigating New Horizons, 2 who ended up in psychiatric facilities themselves. The third one just disappeared. Never found her body. The investigation lasted 2 months. What they uncovered was bigger than just Dr. Richards. Insurance executives, hospital administrators, even a judge, all of them profiting from patient deaths. They targeted people with large life insurance policies, transferred them between facilities, cut them off from their families, made their suicides look convincing. 17 people dead, $40 million in fraudulent claims. They're all in prison now, but that doesn't help me sleep at night. I can't stop thinking about those weeks when someone was messing with my head, making me question everything I knew. The scariest part, I never noticed it happening. These days I have cameras everywhere. I document everything I do, triple check my coffee. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, grabbing my phone to check the time, desperate to know I haven't lost more hours of my life. I'm still a forensic accountant, still good with numbers, but I'm not the same person. I look over my shoulder constantly, question everything. Every new case makes me wonder if someone's watching me, if they're already working their way into my mind. I used to think numbers never lied. Now I know better. Our minds are fragile things, and some people know exactly how to break them. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already trapped in their web. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really escaped. I never should have started digging into my family's medical history. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, but I had to know. Being a genetic counselor with von Hippel-Lindau syndrome means I'm intimately familiar with hereditary conditions. My own diagnosis came at 23, but something about my grandmother's records never added up. It started with an old photograph I found while cleaning out Mom's attic. The black and white image showed my grandmother in what looked like a hospital uniform. She was a nurse at Oak Ridge State Hospital, Mom had always told me. But the way my grandmother was standing in that photo, something felt off. I noticed her vacant expression, the way she was positioned next to other women in identical clothing. They weren't uniforms. They were patient gowns. My hands started shaking as I dug deeper into the hospital archives. Accessing old medical records is part of my job, but nothing prepared me for what I found that night. My grandmother wasn't a nurse at Oak Ridge. She was a patient, admitted in 1952 with a diagnosis of hereditary feeble-mindedness. The documents detailed a state-mandated sterilization procedure, part of a eugenics program targeting people with genetic conditions. I felt sick, my throat tight, hands trembling as I read through more files. There were hundreds of cases just like hers. Young women, labeled defective, stripped of their right to have children, but what made my blood run cold was the date on the most recent file, 2019. I started tracking similar cases across different hospitals, modern genetic testing being used to identify carriers of hereditary conditions, voluntary procedures that felt anything but voluntary. Strange patterns emerged, patient files going missing, death certificates with inconsistent causes. That's when I found Dr. Christine Weber's name. She appeared in both the old records and recent cases. Impossible given the timeline. Unless it wasn't the same person. I dug into her history, found yearbook photos spanning decades. Different women, same name, same role, operating in different hospitals across the state. A network, hiding in plain sight. I started keeping detailed notes, recording everything. The dates, the names, the patterns. One night I was cross-referencing genetic markers when I noticed something in my own test results. Abnormalities that didn't match my condition. Signs of tampering. My hands shook as I pulled up my mother's records. More discrepancies. Then my sister's results. All altered. Someone had been monitoring our family for generations. I worked late that night at the clinic, going through more records. The lights in the hallway flickered. Then footsteps, getting closer. My office door was locked, but I watched in horror as the handle slowly turned. A security guard, they said later. But I know what I saw through that glass. The man wasn't wearing a uniform. He had a manila folder in his hand, just like the ones from the old asylum records. I got out through the back exit that night, but they know I'm investigating. My work computer was wiped clean the next day. Patient files gone. They're watching me, waiting. Last week I got an email from an unlisted address. Your grandmother chose wisely. Then another. The program protects future generations. And yesterday, your sister's pregnant. Congratulations. I haven't slept properly since. Sometimes I wake up to my phone recording voice memos I never started, or my medical records app open to pages I never accessed. I've started noticing cars following me home, strange calls from blocked numbers, just breathing on the other end. Yesterday, I found a hospital bracelet on my doorstep. Dated 1952, my grandmother's patient number printed in fading ink. This morning, my sister called, said her doctor recommended a new prenatal genetic screening at a facility I've never heard of. When I tried to warn her, my phone cut out. Now it won't turn back on. I know what they're capable of, what they've done to others like me, but I have to keep digging. For my grandmother, for my sister, for all the others. I've hidden copies of my research in secure locations, encrypted files sent to trusted journalists. If you're reading this and something happens to me, look into Oak Ridge, look into Dr. Weber, look into the genetic testing programs at New Haven Medical Center. The truth needs to come out before they can silence anyone else. I hear footsteps outside my door now, heavy ones. The lights just flickered. My phone is recording again, but I didn't start it. They're here.